Okay, we will go ahead and get started. So hello all, my name is Mimi Mudd, and I want to welcome you all to our fourth and final webinar for our Spring 2024 Family Webinar Series. Tonight, I'm joined by my colleague, Andrew Watling, who is the Director for Dining Services. We're excited that you've chosen to join us tonight to learn more about dining services and the resources and options they have. Some information before we get started. So first, we want to make sure you know how to submit questions during this webinar. So you'll notice we've given you the ability to ask questions via the Zoom Q&A feature. Our staff within Student Transitions and Family Programs is going to help field these questions throughout tonight's webinar. So to make sure you all know how to use the Q&A feature, please share the city from which you are watching, and then we'll name a few of them on air in a little bit. Second, in the chat feature, we will be sharing links and email addresses throughout the duration of the webinar, so make sure that you are checking that out and following along if that is helpful. Third, this webinar is being recorded live. Next week, it will be uploaded to our families.woostel.edu website. In a moment, we'll be hearing from our panelists about dining services on campus. If something Andrew says sparks a question, again, remember to send that in via the Q&A feature. After the presentation, we will move into the Q&A portion of the evening. So before passing things along to Andrew, I want to share some of the places from which people are joining us tonight. So we have families tuning in from Nashville, Tennessee, Jericho, New York, and Marlborough, New Jersey. Now, since I know you all want to hear more about dining services, I will go ahead and turn it over to Andrew.
Hi. Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. I'm really glad to have this opportunity to talk with everybody and share just a little bit more about dining services here at WashU and answer some questions. So as Mimi said, my name is Andrew Watling. I'm the Director for Dining Services. I joined WashU about 4.5 years ago, so like a lot of our graduating students, I'm hitting my my senior year here at this university. And so just a little bit of a kind of general overview of our campus dining services and what we who we are and what we offer. Dining services provides about 16,000 meals a day across our campus here at WashU. We operate all of the contracts that we use, including our Sodexo food service provider, the 9 local restaurant partners that we have on campus, as well as our faculty and staff club. And so all of that combined, we serve a lot of meals across all of our different operations. We have 19 different food service locations across campus in order to make that all happen. So our team is made up of a number of individuals, some of them with some of our contract partners, but also with our university department. We have 5 registered dietitians who are here to help our students here at WashU best access and advocate for them as needed. And I always want to make sure that we make the plug that they're here to make sure that your students are comfortable, able to access everything that they need. And if there's something that's not quite working right, or even if it just feels harder than it should be to find the things that you need, they're the ones that are here to make sure that they can help access that food. A lot of people, say, I don't need to meet with a dietitian. I know what I need, but they are here to make sure that you are and your students are able to access the food that you might need. In addition to that, we do a number of significant student feedback and outreach efforts. And so I always encourage parents to talk to their students, or if there's students that are listening, to make sure that that we have our dining service advisory team. So that's a group that meets monthly with us and other leaders from our dining team. We have about 50 students who are a member of the dining advisory team, and they get to meet with us. We talk about the options, what students are looking for, what they're experiencing, and how we can best meet their needs with our services. We also have mystery shoppers, and we have a few that are going to be graduating here in a few weeks. So we're going to be looking for some more mystery shoppers coming up in the fall semester. And these are students that we provide a preloaded card, and they get to go around campus. And as they use that card to buy meals, they submit specific feedback forms to us, and we gather hundreds of mystery shopper submissions every month so that we have a really good feel of what is happening and what is going on around our campus. And then we also have feedback surveys. So the best way for anybody to tell us what they're thinking or what's happening is to make sure that you use those feedback surveys, that they tell us what they're experiencing. There are QR codes in all of our dining centers around campus. It's also found on the website. So we highly encourage students to make sure that they utilize those and tell us what they're seeing and how they're experiencing our dining services on campus. So I think we are very proud of the dining services options that we have here at WashU. One of the things we pride ourselves on is the number and the variety of choices that we have to make sure that our students can have really whatever it is that they're looking for at their fingertips while they're here on campus. As I think as a lot of people here are aware, we did have a transition over the last year. Our food service provider, who had been at campus for quite a while, left this last year. And so we do have some new food service providers, and like any large transition, we are working through some growing pains and some challenges that we are addressing. And as we work with our students and with the provider, we want to make sure that we are able to identify those areas of concern and do everything that we can to correct those as quickly as possible. But so with that, Mimi, I think I'll hand it back to you, and we can start with some Q&A.
Great, thank you for that information. So we will go ahead and I'll kind of kick off the Q&A portion of the evening with the general question that I think a lot of parents and family members might be wondering. We then did get some pre-submitted questions, and I see some questions rolling in the Q&A. So just a reminder for people to continue doing that. So first question is, when and to whom should a student reach out if they have dietary restrictions, allergies, etc., and want to connect one-on-one?
Yeah, the right person to reach out to is really any of our dietitians, but we have our director of nutrition, Rebecca Miller, is really the great first step, and her email address, as Mimi just put in the chat, it can be found on our website. What we ask or really encourage our students to do is, if there's a concern, even if you're not sure if there's an actual issue, is to make sure that you reach out to us as soon as possible. There is nothing worse, and we always have at least one story where we hear from a student at the end of the year that they were struggling to find an option, or they didn't know something was available to them, and a quick conversation earlier on could have made their experience here significantly better or easier. So we encourage you to reach out as soon as you think there might be a concern. And even if you're not sure what you need or how they can help, they are here to be the advocates of our students. They're in meetings daily with the Sodexo team, with our retail partners, to go over the menus, to address those concerns and make sure that what we're hearing and what we see from our students is being taken care of.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's see. So next question. We received a few pre-submitted questions asking if there's been any type of consideration of moving from a la carte to all you care to eat meal plans. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, we have been actively working on determining what a potential path forward with an all you care to eat type operation might look like. There are a considerable amount of investment that would have to take place as far as building and space changes to make that a reality. But it is something that we are actively looking at and working on how to best implement that. Part of that process has been talking with students and really trying to make sure that we understand what our students want. And there's a lot of mixed feelings by our student population across the board as to what type of dining do they really want to see. And so we're trying to make sure that if we make a change, we're not making a change that we then have to undo or then fix other downline issues. So we want to make sure that we do it right. We want to make sure that it is the right thing to do, but we are actively working on that with university leadership.
And then a follow-up question, are there currently any all-you-care-to-eat or buffet style options on campus at this time?
Yeah, we have brought back the Ibby's lunch buffet, which was a popular pre-COVID feature of Ibby's. And so for that, it is an option. It is a smaller space, and so it's not a large dining facility, but that is something that is was and is now very popular as well. We've also introduced a kind of limited all you care to eat at the Village during our lunchtime, which has also proven to be very popular. And as we move forward, I think we're going to continue to look at doing more things like that, where we do find that students are responding well to some of those options.
Great, thank you. Okay, and then we received a few pre-submitted and some current questions asking about the food vendor Sodexo. So can you first just kind of tell us the process of selecting the new food vendor and how you all work together to kind of accommodate WashU students' needs?
Yeah, we had a committee formed, including members of university leadership. We had students on that committee who evaluated the different options and different proposals that we had in front of us. And when we made the selection to go with Sodexo, we made it very clear that we had very high expectations of what WashU dining was and is going to be. We also know that any transition of food service providers is a long process. And so we wanted to make sure that we had all of the resources in place to make sure that that could happen. I think the bringing on a new provider and really the hard work is to make sure that Sodexo can really become an integrated part of our campus community. We've had a lot of work with the team around their communication, around making sure that the product is consistent and that it meets our high expectations. And I think, we will be fully transparent. I think there's a lot of areas where we do see their services are meeting the expectations that we have, but perhaps not consistently enough. And there's some areas that we are still pushing and making sure that they are working on actively. But Sodexo has been a great partner. We are working with them daily to make sure that the dining program that we see on our campus is meeting the expectations that we have. And that's why it's really important that we have students engaged in providing feedback in the DSAT to make sure that they can hear from as many students as possible about what they like, what they don't like, what they would like to see, and how do we make sure that those needs are being met. But throughout that process, we have had a number of different people within the university involved. And I think key to making that decision is having students who are part of the DSAT and part of the student union included in that decision, so that we made sure that what we were selecting, we all felt like was the right step for WashU to take forward.
Great, thank you. And then, so kind of knowing that you all are working together to potentially create some changes in the areas that we feel like they could meet expectations more, do you all currently know what changes might come for 2024, 2025? Any like exciting updates or kind of where you all at with that?
Yeah, we don't have any specific updates in place. What we're trying to make sure we do is that we really vet the options and ideas with the team and with our students to make sure that what we proceed forward with is truly something that's in the best interest of our community. What I will say is I think we've seen the areas that our students have really responded well to when Sodexo has worked with local restaurants to do pop-ups in those spaces. Those have responded really well. And so we want to make sure that we do more of those, reintroducing a lot of the made to order custom options For example, we had them reintroduce the make to order pasta station in the Bears Den, which went away for a number of years over COVID, and bringing that back has been very popular to make sure that we keep some of those really key options available and in place. So what we want to make sure we do is that we don't get rid of something that is working really well, and that if we do to make a change, that it's really being done with the student input, and that we recognize where the students want the dining program to go and what they're looking for when they go get their meals.
Thank you. Okay, so kind of another topic, going back to, I think we kind of started in like meal plan bear bucks. We had a few pre-submitted questions talking about the prices. Can you first kind of explain or clarify the difference between using meal plan points and bear bucks?
Yeah. So meal points are loaded to your account specifically for dining services use. Bear bucks can be used anywhere outside of dining services, as well as within our dining centers on campus. Bear bucks work largely the same way that meal points do. And for students who do run out of meal points, those are the option for them to add more funds to their account to continue to use them. And there's no difference in value between using your meal points and using your bear bucks when you go into a dining center. Bear bucks only work on campus. The one exception to that is they do work on Grubhub. So if you are off campus, you can use bear bucks to utilize Grubhub services anywhere you want to go. With some technology updates that we had to make to some of our back-end systems, we lost the ability to use the bear buck off-campus program. And I say temporarily, we are still actively working to try to bring that back, but with the limitations of the technology systems and how they talk to each other, we don't want to make any promises that we can't keep.
Great. That was a question that was actually just submitted. So
Perfect.
thank you for adding that in. Okay, so then the next question would be, is there a set like bear buck to dollar amount conversion? Or is it just kind of?
Yeah, so bear bucks are a dollar to dollar. So if you load a bear buck onto your account, it spends just like a dollar. The only major difference is that when you use bear bucks on campus, you don't pay sales tax. So that is a slight benefit there. The purpose of bear bucks really is to make sure that students have a really easy way to access and spend money while they're on campus. It's an easy way for parents to give students money that they can use without just getting access to a credit card or something like that. So, but you don't pay sales tax, which is a nice little extra perk.
Great. Okay, so then we got some questions about how portions prices are set. Some parents or family members, or maybe the students, feel like the prices have increased and portions have decreased. Can you speak to how those things are set, how that's determined?
So we take a very active approach with with all of our dining options on campus to make sure that the prices are understandable, that they make sense, and that they are providing a really good value for our students. The prices of options across the Bears Den, the Duck, and the Village year over year actually decreased item to item by about 5% coming into this year. What I do think we've seen is where there's been some inconsistencies. Some of that inconsistency might be in the portioning of food. And I know I experience that sometimes when I go in. Sometimes I'll go and I get more food than I can even finish, and I can eat some food. And then sometimes I'll go and I look at it and I think, well, this is really not the kind of value, and this is not what should be being served. So I think some of that consistency is where we really see the improvement really needing to be made. We also have a lot of work to still do, I think, and I think we've made a lot of improvements with the marketing on how do we sign and how do we message what the different options are. I think going into the semester, we were trying to make sure we heard some feedback from students that they really wanted to see like a bundled meal option. And so we really promoted that, and I think the sticker shock of seeing that one higher price, and what we heard from students after that was, well, I don't actually want all of those things, and so don't show me the bundle price because I don't want all of the things that are in that bundled meal. And so we had to undo some of that marketing and messaging to get back to where we're really highlighting kind of what the individual items specifically cost. So the consistency, I think, in the portion size and making sure it's really important to us that the quality of the food does match what you pay for it. We recognize that offering food service anywhere is certainly not a cheap endeavor anymore, and we want to make sure that our students, while they're here at WashU, are getting a really good value. And so that's part of where, when we recognize that a menu item is really not meeting the quality that we feel like it needs to for the price that it is, we want to make sure that we're addressing those concerns and making sure that when you buy that item, you do get the quality that you think matches the price. So I think that.
A follow-up question, what does dining services do to ensure that food stays affordable for students?
Yeah, I think this is where, having a partner like Sodexo really becomes important, that we can lean on them to provide bulk buying opportunities and really use the size of their company to help us get the best prices possible on food and options. And part of our process when we look at our menus is to really help us understand where do we have options to offer, more value-oriented meals and things that students are looking for. We really do take it very seriously that we don't want to charge more than is necessary. But we also want to make sure that we are treating our staff the way that they need to be treated, and that we are buying good quality whole produce and quality meats, and that we are serving items that kind of meet those specifications. So when we talk about our staff, we have 275 employees who are working very hard to make sure that we can provide food service across our campus. And a significant portion of the cost of providing food service goes to making sure that they're here, that they're paid well, that they have benefits, and all of those things that we think are very important as well. So we always try to make sure that we are offering the best value possible, that the offerings that we have are really good quality. And we also want to make sure that we're not offering things that are costing, that cost money, that just don't make sense. We always look at our hours of operation, where are students using dining, where are they not? And if there's a space where they're not using our services, how can we adjust those offerings so that we can put the resources into other places and not continue to unnecessarily add cost into the program.
Okay, great. Sorry, I think I muted you when I tried to unmute myself. Okay, and then one more question specific to prices. We had a few people write in about pause and go. I believe some like food did not have prices labeled. And then curious if those prices are handled differently than through Sodexo, or if that's kind of all the same.
Yeah, pause and go is operated by Sodexo, and so they are the pricing process is very similar. Pause and go is a convenience store, and the prices that we get on a lot of those products coming in, they are expensive products for us to get in and source, and so we try to make sure that we are pricing them as reasonably as possible. I think there are always a few things that we notice. Sometimes when we look at the pricing, something that gets put on the shelf, and then when we do our analysis, we recognize that this really just doesn't make sense for us to even try to sell, because we can't sell it at a reasonable price. But we also sometimes do recognize that there are options that we have mispriced. We have definitely caught things that got put into the system at an incorrect price, and we try to make sure that we catch those and identify them. So I do always encourage our students to make sure that when they do recognize something, or they see something as a wrong price or doesn't seem right, that they let us know so that we can try to address it. But what I do always recommend to our students, and we try to make sure that they understand, is that when they're using pause and go, if you need items or if you're looking for items to have just in your room, the going to your grocery store, to Walmart, or doing those kind of things is going to be a more economical way to source some of those items. We cannot buy things in a way that is able to compete with some of those larger retailers who get much, much better pricing in the door for a lot of those products. So I hope that helps explain a little bit. We do try to make sure that we are charging the best prices that we possibly can for a lot of those items. But we do also want to make sure that we're sourcing items that our students want to have. And a lot of those don't come cheap to us. And so unfortunately, it is not the cheap option, it's a convenience option for our students.
Thank you for addressing those. Okay, so moving a little bit back into meal plans and Bear Bucks, how do you recommend students and their families kind of gauge what an appropriate meal plan and amount of Bear Bucks might be for them?
Yeah. So I think one of the best options, if you go onto the dining website under the meal plans, there is a kind of a weekly spending chart where we show kind of where students should be at in the semester based on the different plans. A lot of it really depends on what meals your students are eating on campus. We know a lot of our students like to go off campus and eat on the loop occasionally. We want to make sure that their plan facilitates that. A lot of our students really don't eat much in the way of breakfast. So, that is going to be one of the larger determining factors. What we typically see from most of our students is if they are eating the bulk of their meals on campus, maybe 1 or 2 meals a week somewhere else, the gold or the platinum plan is really the right plan for most of those students. We have a lot of students who the silver plan is the right plan for them. Typically, though, those are the students that we see leaving campus for the weekend or doing a lot more other things, and they're not necessarily eating the bulk of their meals with the campus dining program. So typically I recommend, especially for first year students coming in, the platinum plan is the right option, but it really depends on how much you are planning to eat on campus. And I think really at the end of the day, only your student knows how often do they want to be able to go to eat out in a restaurant on town? How often do they want to be able to order pizza? What is that going to look like? And how do we, and then pick the plan from there.
Great. And then who all needs to have a meal plan? Is that on-campus students only, on and off? What's the kind of like rule around that?
So all undergrad students at WashU have a meal plan of some sort. We have a number of different sizes and tiers. And so as you move off campus, you can get the off-campus plan, which gives you in the range of 475 points a semester, and really is focused on providing, lunch once a week and some coffee here and there as you may need it. But we do require all of our students have a meal plan as you move through, into second year, third year, in different types of housing situations. Your plan options change, and you can get smaller and smaller plans depending on where you live on campus or off.
And can a student change their meal plan mid-year?
Students can change meal plans mid-year, so we always encourage before the start of the spring semester to evaluate, your meal plan use and make sure that you have the right plan in place. And then students can always upgrade their plans at any point, but the plans lock after the first 2 weeks of the semester, so you can't downgrade to a smaller plan. So we do want to make sure that we always send a lot of communication out to our students during those first 2 weeks to make sure that they are looking at the plan they have in place, to make sure that it is the right one, so that they can make the appropriate change if they feel like they need to.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now transitioning a little more into dietary restrictions, allergies, nutrition, etc. So we have some like specific questions and asks, and then we can maybe go general. So where can a student find vegan options on campus?
So we have vegan options at all of our locations. One of the things that our dietitians do is they make sure that when we're reviewing those menus, that every location that we have, so every spot within the Bears Den, the Duck, the Village, all of our retail spaces, that they have good protein-rich vegan options. A lot of what I see other places when we see vegan options is, you get a vegetable and some pasta or something like that. And what we want to make sure is that our students have really good protein-rich vegan options. So anywhere on campus, we have vegan options available. And it's really important to us that those are easily accessible so that students who have different dietary needs or lifestyles can interact with dining in the same way as everybody else within our campus. And like I think you're probably going to hear over the next couple of questions, if one of your students is having a hard time finding those options, or if they're not sure exactly where they are, we try to make sure that they're signed well and easy to read, but it's not always as obvious. So we want to make sure that they ask us for help, talk with our dietitians, let them help identify where those are. And if we find that there's a space that doesn't have an appropriate vegan option, or the vegan options that is there is just not appealing, or it's really just not hitting what students are looking for, then we want to be able to make that adjustment.
And then kind of related to what you just said, but in case there's more to the answer, how can students go about asking for a specific dietary restriction option to be expanded? For example, the person who submitted the question is vegetarian and was wondering how vegetarian options could be expanded.
Yeah, it's really simply, meet with our dietitians. If you don't want to meet with them, at least email them and have a line of communication to express. What's really important for us to understand is, where do you or your students feel like there's not enough of an option, because oftentimes when we look at the picture as a whole, we think, we have all these options, we have everything covered. And then when you talk to a student, you find one small case where we just didn't realize that we were maybe missing something, and we need to go back and add those options in. Or maybe we find that the menus are maybe a little stagnant for the vegetarian or vegan options in a certain place, and we need to do some things to help keep those interesting and exciting. So open up a dialogue, at least email and talk with our dietitians if you don't want to meet with them, but make sure that you let us know so that we can help advocate for that either immediately or at least in the next kind of menu cycle that comes around.
Great. And then where can students find halal options?
So we have halal options at World Fusion in the Bears Den. We also have halal options at all of the Simply Made stations, so in the Bears Den and the Duck. So we have all of the chicken that's being served there is halal certified meat, and then we use all halal friendly products and ingredients in those dishes. And then most importantly, the Village, the entire dining hall is halal friendly. So that entire space has been created and menued so that it is halal. We take it very seriously that we work with a local mufti to make sure that what we are offering meets everybody's needs. We meet with the Muslim Student Association on a regular basis to kind of check in on that and make sure that those offerings are really working for everybody. But that's been one of the big changes that Sodexo helped us bring in, is taking that space in the Village and making it 100% halal friendly, which has been really exciting.
Great, thank you. Okay, and then can students with food allergies order meals ahead for pickup?
They can. So we have our Simply Made by You program. So Simply Made is our allergen friendly programming. So it's free of all the top 9 food allergens. For students who have more specific or perhaps more severe food allergies that may not be really serviced well by any of those programs, we do have Simply Made by You. And so Simply Made by You allows students to order ahead on Grubhub at the Bears Den, the Duck, and the Village from a dedicated menu that is specifically designed for those students. And so it's a really great way to have access to something where it's going to a chef who is specifically trained and focused on preparing that meal specifically. In order to get access to that, you do have to meet with one of our dietitians and they have to approve adding you onto the list. Although we do want to make sure that if students feel like they need to be on the list, we generally will add them. What we find is that most of the students who are on the Simply Made by You approved list utilize it about 2 to 3 times a week. So they usually can find other options, but they like to have it as a backup just in case. We do have a handful who utilize it for every single meal. And we do work with the team. So if we add a student to that list and there is a very specific dietary need or even a preference, that's a really good place that we can add it in so that you can order something that you're looking for consistently and you can still have the best dining experience possible. It doesn't feel like you're ordering off of like a limited less than menu. We want to make sure that it's a really great option for students to access.
We actually had a question specific to Simply Made, and in that question, they noted that their students shared they really, really like Simply Made a lot. They have felt like some of the options are limited. Would you recommend the same thing to that student to reach out to the dietitian team, or is that more of like options are coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, I think there's always new options coming, but we always want to hear from our students. So if what I think is a good option or what I think somebody might look for may not actually be what any of our students want to see. And so it's always good to let us know and to reach out and tell us what you would like to see. If there's anything that you feel like is really just not hitting the mark or something that, this is a good opportunity for some of those students to share if there's something that they used to eat when they lived at home that they really miss, and if there's a way that we can incorporate that back into the menu to have access to it, that's always something we like to try to do. So absolutely let us know, and we can work on how to get that put back in. Usually we can make, if it's not a significant change, we can usually work with the team and get those done pretty quickly so that we can have access to those different items.
Great, thank you. Okay, and then where can students find a list of ingredients and or nutritional information, I guess, for like the variety of options that exist?
Yeah. On the website, if you go under the operations and then the menus, it'll take you to the directory of all the different locations, their menus, their ingredients, allergens, and everything else that you might need to know. If you can't find something, or if you're having a hard time looking through it, or if there's a really specific item that a student might be looking for, you can always, again, just email us and we can also look it up and share it with you. But that menu online will tell you what's being served at every location every day. So students can look at it, look through what they're trying to eat, where they might want to go, and try to find the options that that excite them for that day or whatever it may be.
Great. Okay, now transitioning a little bit into kind of hours, locations, operations. Can you tell us a little bit more about those satellite or local restaurant dining options on campus?
Yeah. So we have 9 different local restaurant partners on campus, and we really did that in part to respond to the university's strategic plan of here and next and being a better partner with the St. Louis community, but also in response to what our students are looking for. They tell us, and they spend money in ways that show us that they really want to have local, authentic options for food on campus. And so we had an opportunity to bring that into part of our program, and it's been very well received. We're very excited about how our students are interacting with those vendors, with the success of them. We see a lot of people gravitating to those options, even if even if the line is long at one of them or whatever it may be. And so all of those different spaces, they are independent businesses that we as WashU Dining Services contract with. We do have some minimum hours and service standards that we want to make sure that they live up to. But just like everything else, we are always looking at what does their operation look like, what really makes sense for our students. So if we see that there's a place where we need to extend the hours or shift the hours earlier or later, then we'll work with that owner to try to make that change. And this is again where we like to hear feedback from students. One of the things we learned going into this year after talking with our students is that we closed lunch at the Duck at 2 o'clock. And we had a lot of students that said there's a 2 o'clock class that gets out. And so there's a lot of us that can't get lunch there. And so going into this year, we extended that lunch hour, really that lunch period to 3 o'clock. And we've had a really good response from that. We see a lot of students using it. And so it is helpful. Sometimes there's just things we don't know. And that's where, again, that student feedback is really helpful for us to know. What does it feel like? What are you missing? What would you like to see to make sure that you can access food when and where you need it?
That's great. Thank you. Okay, how are dining facility hours set for those academic breaks, like fall and spring break?
So our hours of operation for breaks are really set based on two things. It's based on how many students are going to be here and when, and just historical knowledge we have about what students actually utilize and where. And so we take those into account. We try to put together a schedule for breaks that really meets the needs of our students, but doesn't kind of unnecessarily over-resource our campus. So within that, I will say there's always room for improvement. And again, that's where we like to hear from students as to, did we miss something? Was there a need that we didn't have covered? We do try our best to make sure that we cover everything at all times. But we don't always do it perfectly. And so we do want to make sure that we hear from students. Each break is handled independently and separately. So we don't have a standard, this is what a break close down looks like. We look at each one because the way that students leave and come back to campus is different for every different break. And so we want to make sure that we are adjusting those accordingly. And every year we learn something different. We see the way that students interact with the different options on campus, and we make different adjustments. And so we're always looking to improve and do it better next time.
Great. And then where can students find coffee on campus?
You can find coffee everywhere. We have approximately a dozen different coffee shops on campus. So there's a coffee shop in the Bears Den, the Duck, and the Village. We have one in the library, and we have another 6, I think, different coffee shops kind of spread throughout campus, utilizing different coffee options. So if you don't like one specific coffee, you can go find a different one. And we really do encourage our students to get out and try the different options. Part of what we think is a really important part of having a campus dining program is having really diverse options and allowing students to find their space. Not everything on campus is going to be set up the exact same. And that means that there's going to be things that students really resonate with certain students. And there's going to be spaces that other students maybe don't find as appealing, but other students really resonate and respond well to it. So I know coffee is something I love. I have my favorite coffees on campus. There are coffees on campus that I don't love as much, and I make sure I, seek out the ones that I really enjoy. And I hear from students that they like the ones I don't. And so that's a great thing about those type of options. We also have 3 different Costa coffee machines, which are 24-hour fresh brewed vended coffee. So if you haven't seen them around campus, there's one in the Bears Den, one in the library, and then one in Steinberg Hall, which is in the Sam Fox school. But those are available 24/7. They have fresh milk in it. They grind and brew lattes, cappuccinos, whatever you might want, at whatever time of day you want. So those get used pretty heavily as well. And so students obviously want lots of coffee, and so we try to make sure that it's always available to them.
Great. And then we got a follow-up question to the conversation about hours. Where can students find hours of locations during the normal school year? And then where can they find them for those academic breaks for fall and winter breaks or spring breaks?
Yeah. So if you go to our the dining website under each location, it'll show you the normal hours of operation during the school year. When we come to breaks, we do typically post a kind of standalone break schedule that'll get put on the hours page of our website. We are always trying to find a better way to display the hours of operation. There's a lot of complex hours, and we want to make sure that it's as easy to read as possible. So I think I will freely admit we are continuing to work with our marketing team to come up with new ways to display those hours as efficiently as possible. But they are always on the hours page of our website, and then they get shared out on social media leading up to some of those break times. We also have, if anyone's not signed up for it, we have a monthly newsletter that goes out. And so that also includes information about break hours that are coming up, as well as other events and changes of service or anything else that may be coming up.
Great, thank you. Okay, now transitioning a little more into like resources and services that might be specific to dining services or ones that you know about. So the first one is about resources and services to support students who might be struggling with food insecurity for kind of really any reason, whether that's they don't have enough meal points or any other reason that could be.
Yeah, so we have a food security fund, which we launched in 2020. It is supported by dining services. We also encourage students at the end of each semester, if they have unused meal points that they would like to transfer to the fund, that they can do so. That food security fund is actually administered by Student Financial Services. And so there is a form that you can fill out. It's linked on our website. You can fill that out. It goes to Student Financial Services, and they'll review the student's account, make sure that there's no other financial aid that they may be available for, and then let us know how many points to add to that account. The really great thing about the Food Security Fund is that what we do is we add points directly to the student's card. And so when they go back into the dining hall, they don't have to tell the cashier it's coming out of a separate account. They don't have to hand them a different card. There's no real restrictions on where you can use it or how you can use it. And if a student uses those points, they can come back and ask for more. Full disclosure, we will at that point try to have a little bit more of a follow-up conversation to help kind of better navigate some budgeting needs around their food. But we do want to make sure that a student who doesn't have the resources is able to eat the whole time that they're here. And so we have provided students with a significant number of meal points to make sure that they can get through the end of the semester without going hungry, because that's certainly not something that lives up to the WashU values. So the Food Security Fund is available. We do encourage students to transfer funds to it, but we will also, as dining services, we will fund it as needed to make sure that it's not something that runs out of funds. And we're also always working with Student Financial Services and the university in general to help them better understand what students' needs are around food security. It is something that we definitely do want to make sure is being addressed at a really high level, and try to figure out how we can best as a university address some of those needs. But it's really important that we help address those in a way that don't feel demeaning or dehumanizing. We want to make sure that this is something that people feel comfortable accessing. It's easy. We try to remove as many barriers as possible for students who may need to access that fund.
Thank you. Okay, then we had a question about services and resources for students who might be wanting help in making healthier food choices for themselves or changing up their food choices in whatever way they choose.
So again, we have our dietitians, and this is where I think most people really think about dietitians, is that they're here to help us make better, healthier choices. Our dietitian teams really take a very holistic and healthy approach to what does healthy eating look like. One of the things we take very seriously is that we don't label anything around campus as healthy, specifically because we want to make sure that students understand that everything that they eat is and can be healthy within moderation and reason. So the dietitians are here to help us do that. They're here to help you as a student or you as a parent kind of help advocate and make sure that your students understand how to better do that, what choices are available for them, help direct them to the places that they can go and help, really navigate. And we'll do anything that your student may feel like they need. So we do a lot of kitchen walkthroughs with students who are looking to better navigate the dining halls. We'll introduce them to chefs, whatever we need to do to help kind of make that happen. And that can be done as a one-off consult and conversation, or it could be something that's an ongoing service where we meet regularly with a student and have kind of check-ins to see how everything's going. So we offer all of those, and that's something that's just provided by dining services. This is not something that we necessarily, we're not charging students additionally for that service. That's part of what we offer as dining services.
Great, thank you. Okay, we are coming up on our second to last question for the evening. And this was a fun question submitted from a family member. So what is your favorite dining location on campus, if you could only pick one?
Yeah, I have quite a few favorites, and I know, the one that I always tend to go back to, I'm a native of Southern California, and so Filipino food was something that I grew up with and kind of really enjoyed. And moving away from that area, you don't find it nearly as much. And so one of our local retail partners that's in McKelvey Hall and Bites Cafe is the Fat and Calf, which is a Filipino barbecue restaurant. And so when I do make it over to that corner of campus, I think that has to be one of my favorites. But I also really enjoy, my office is down here on the South 40. And so my go-to at the Bears Den, you can't go wrong with something from World Fusion. They do a really nice job. And so I always kind of go towards that for a lot of meals while I'm down here.
Great. So we are going to ask one last question for the evening. Andrew, thank you again for the information you've shared tonight. What is one key takeaway, again, if you could only pick one, that you hope parents and families take away from this conversation?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to take away is that we want to make sure we hear from you. We want to make sure we hear from your students. And we want to be able to talk about what you're missing, what you can't find, what you enjoy. The great thing I always like to tell everybody, the great thing about working in food is that everybody has an opinion about it. And sometimes the hard thing about working in food is that everybody has an opinion about it. But I really enjoy, and we really take it seriously, that we hear from our students, from our parents, and that we can really help to make sure that the dining program grows forward. Food service never stops. It's never done. There's always new options. We're always looking to do things differently and better. And so we want to make sure that when we're moving things forward, that we're moving things forward in the right direction, and that we're doing what our students are really saying that they want to see. So it's incredibly important that we hear from our students. If parents reach out with concerns, we'll always gladly talk to parents, but we always want to talk with the students. And so we will always ask, can we get in touch with your student? Can we really have a conversation with them to best understand what they're looking for? And generally we find that a lot of the concerns that are brought forward from students, we either already had something in place, or once we recognized that there was something missing, that we were able to implement something pretty quickly.
Great, thank you. Andrew, thank you again for all the information you've provided this evening. It was extremely helpful, and appreciate all the answers that you provided to our parent and family questions. Families, we hope you learned valuable information this evening. As a reminder, this webinar was recorded and it will be shared at the families.wusl.edu website by kind of end of next week. Stay tuned for the announcement of our fall 2024 webinar schedule, which will be announced closer to August. Reminder that our summer webinar series, which is currently on our website, is for those incoming parents and families. So you still can tune in, it just might not be as applicable to you all. So stay tuned for our fall 2024 webinar schedule. And you'll be able to register for those in the future at our families.wusl.edu website. So goodbye. I look forward to seeing you all again in the fall. And thank you again, Andrew. I hope everyone has a good rest of their day or evening.
Thank you, Mimi. Thank you all for joining.